Canadians are starting to tune in now, and those who voted for Justin 4 years ago are looking and saying, is this the right person? Is this the same person I believed in 4 years ago?
The fact is, he's a faux feminist, a faux leader, a faux environmentalist. He sat in front of Greta Thunberg and said, I've got your back, and then jumped on his one of two planes, which he needed because he needed to carry the costumes.
Stephen Harper didn't build an inch of pipelines for the 9 years that he was in power. Justin Trudeau bought a pipeline.
The environment is a big issue, and it's not a question of being conservative or liberal. It's a question of, I'm worried about this, who's got the answer?
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Libby Znaimer.
Welcome to the Zoomer. I'm Libby Znaimer. We're heading into a federal election, but this time there's no massive push for change like there was in 2015, and there's no huge issue to galvanize Canadians. Many people are predicting the lowest turnout in years. In that context, the Zoomer vote is more important than ever. Canadians between the age of 65 and 74 have the highest voter participation, with the last election showing Zoomers represented 78.8% of the overall turnout at the polls. Now, with so much riding on the opinions of older Canadians, we'll take an in-depth look at what each party has to offer. But before we dive in, let's tee up the topic.
Seniors are much more diverse than politicians believe. There are many indicators that show a population with needs. For example, 700,000 seniors live at or near the poverty line. 1 million seniors are unpaid caregivers. Over 450,000 live in care facilities. And 5 million are retired. On the other hand, the seniors population also includes healthy, dynamic, and active people. Over 1.2 million are still in the workforce. 86% access the internet daily. 716,000 have savings and investments of $500,000 or more. 1.1 million say they enjoy taking risks. And 2.3 million say they try to keep up with the latest in technology. Bottom line, seniors are no longer a homogeneous group. Do politicians get this?
Well, given that there is no overriding push for change, what's this election about? Polls say health care is the #1 issue, but all parties are promising to improve it. The environment ranks second, but will people actually vote on it? Then there's the question of the character of the leaders. How does Andrew Scheer compare to Justin Trudeau? Time to check in with our panel. And let's start with you, John Capobianco.
The issue here with respect to this election campaign is an interesting one, because unlike other election campaigns where change sometimes is the factor or the key political factor, what we're seeing here is only after one term that change isn't a burning desire for voters. But you know, the issue of, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Is the person you voted for 4 years ago somebody who you think is the person that you believed in then? Is he going to be able to carry on in the next 4 years, and is the economy going to be strong in the next 4 years? So the issue is not so much as change as it is with respect to who are you going to pick in this election that's going to carry the ball for the next 4 years, and will the economy be better off or worse off than it was 4 years ago?
Charles?
I have a 79-year-old father who's a retired high school teacher. My mother is 78. She was a nurse at the Wellesley Hospital, which some of you may remember, for over 40 years. My mother also has a pretty severe medical condition, so the issues that we are facing in this election are very, very real to me. I think this election has yet to find its defining motif, and with the polls so close, I agree with my friend John that it's been a long time since we've seen numbers this flat.
Is this a lot about character or about issues?
Both. And I think on the character side, it's some of the events that have transpired involving Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Scheer have been quite remarkable. Frankly, I don't think they're having much of an impact. I think that, if anything, it's solidified the extent of support for the main parties.
Mike Schreiner, people say the environment is the second most important issue. Do you think that they will actually go to the ballot box and vote on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I was a part of the climate rally that happened here at Queen's Park just a few weeks ago. You know, we had millions of people in the streets across the country, and I can tell you a lot of people said that was youth-led, and it was youth-led, but there were many Zoomers in the crowd, and I can't tell you how many seniors I've spoken to who want to leave a livable legacy for their children, their grandchildren, and future generations.
Kim Wright, the NDP now has a rival in the Green Party, and what a lot of polls are saying is that it's going to be very tough for the NDP, particularly in Quebec.
What's actually been quite interesting has been once the spotlight of the election campaign has hit the New Democrats and Jagmeet Singh, and we've seen some pretty unveiled racism over the course of the last few weeks of the campaign, starting with Justin Trudeau's blackface photographs, but then moving into how people have engaged with Jagmeet Singh and how he has himself have responded. They've got a chance to know who he is and who what he stands for. It was interesting when we look at how he has positioned questions around healthcare and pharmacare. When reporters ask him, well, how are we going to pay for it? It really is a sense of what are your priorities? I frequently say, and listeners to Zoomer will have often heard me say, show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. If clean drinking water in our Indigenous communities is a priority, and frankly, if it were any other city in the country, they would not have the same problem they have in Attawapiskat or Grassy Narrows or any of the Indigenous communities that don't have clean drinking water. These things would be fixed. It's your priorities. And people are really seeing what New Democrats can do, and they're intrigued by it.
Marissa.
So we survey our members fairly regularly, and while their support for the various parties fluctuates, one thing that's been consistent is the percentage of people that are undecided. And that's hovering around 22% for CARP members right now. We know our members are extremely engaged, they're active, they care about these issues. It's unfortunate that these scandals distract from some of the more important conversations that need to be had during this election. But when we surveyed them recently, healthcare was the #1 issue, as you said in your intro. The second most important issue, the environment. So to me, that says our members don't vote as a bloc. They don't care exclusively about things that touch their pocketbook or matter to seniors, but rather they care about a whole host of issues beyond just those senior-specific topics.
Brian, what do you make of it? I mean,
anyone that wants to take any particular voting bloc for granted does so at their own peril. And I think maybe the Harper Conservatives did that, and in 2015, there's an awful lot of people over the age of 50 that were voting for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. Are they going to come out now? Will younger people come out now? These are the questions that are keeping Liberal strategists that I talk to up at night, because, you know, the Conservatives have to be worried that Andrew Scheer isn't further ahead in the polls, especially given the scandals that, you know, do distract but obviously capture attention. The Liberals have to be worried that their guy has done so many things that people may just stay at home.
what about the People's Party? Are they anywhere?
1% to 2%, they're not really registering. Maxime Bernier, a guy I've known since he was first elected in 2006, has gotten a lot of media attention. I'm sure he'd like to have better media attention than he's had, but you know, if people are interested in them, they've got the ability to find out what he's all about, and so far he's not grabbing them.
And as we go around the table, our demographics guru, what do they have to do to capture that undecided Zoomer vote?
Well, I think there's two answers. There's what do they need to do in terms of how Zoomers look at the election, and then what do they need to do in terms of the cadence or the arc of the election itself, where nobody's breaking out. The environment's a big issue, and I do, speaking for the Zoomer demographic, slightly more likely than the millennials of all things to believe that climate change is a serious problem. Meaningfully more likely than millennials to recycle, to be willing to pay more for green products, to be worried about a legacy they leave behind for their grandchildren. So the environment is a big issue, and it's not a question of being conservative or liberal. It's a question of, I'm worried about this. Who's got the answer?
Okay, when we come back, what are the parties promising Zoomers? Stay tuned.
I think what we've seen with the Liberal government in the last 4 years is, instead of focusing on these areas, they've been focusing on spending money in foreign affairs and international areas and sending money all over the place instead of focusing on more domestic related issues.
Don Is writes, "The same old crap year after year. They just do things to get them re-elected, giving money to half the world that should be used here in Canada. We pensioners received 57 cents on the old age pension last year. A bloody insult."
Welcome back. While Zoomers care about more than the issues that affect their pocketbooks, every party has a financial package directed at them. And according to a 2015 Statistics Canada report, nearly 1.1 million Canadians aged 65 and over reported working, the highest number since 1981. For many, that's a matter of choice, but some older workers feel trapped, including the 76-year-old Darren Maharaj caught up with.
Okay, here's what I'm having for dinner. That's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to be, here are my beets. They were not expensive. My friends are so good to me because I don't have a big food budget, right? So they bring me soups. So tonight I have a sausage lentil.
For 76-year-old Wendy Mason, who lives here in this Toronto apartment, the dream of retiring simply isn't a reality. With bills stacking up, she's forced to work.
There's no dream of retiring. No, that's not in my future. I wouldn't be able to stay in my home, my apartment, and manage if I didn't keep working. So I'll be working until I drop on the retail floor. I cut back on groceries and I eat a lot of soup is what I eat, and make a lot of soup for myself. Well, this is my son, my late son. I've buried 2 of my children. I have one daughter left, but she lives in Arizona. So no, I don't. I have no one else, but I have my work family. They mean everything to me, those kids. And the government is not helping me out at all. And especially when I think when I cannot work anymore, I wouldn't be able to afford a dental. You know, when you get older, things happen. Your teeth need repairing or fixing or replacing. I wouldn't be able to afford dental care. I wouldn't be able to afford my vision care. It all just scares the, excuse my language, out of me, but it does.
Wendy's dental benefits are one of the main reasons she has to work, and the NDP says they know she's not alone. That's why they are offering free dental for households that make under $70,000 a year. Also included in their platform is National Pharmacare that will save seniors hundreds on prescription medicine. They've also included a 1-year grace period for filing taxes so seniors don't lose their GIS. And lastly, they plan to refund the Canada caregiver tax. The Liberals have 2 main promises aimed towards seniors that include a 10% increase of the OAS for those over 75, which adds up to a max of $750 a year. And they're also promising to increase the CPP survivor benefit for those that have lost a spouse by 25% of the existing 60%, so widowers would receive 75%. And lastly, the Conservatives, while offering to get rid of the 9% carbon tax and 5% of GST on heating your home, the only promise they're making to seniors specifically is an offer to increase the seniors' age tax credit by $1,000, which comes out to a $150 a year refund. But that's only if you're still working, like Wendy. So what does she think?
I'm still mulling it all over because When you get to be as old as I am, it's like you get sick and tired of promises made by all parties. If you contribute and give and support your country and help others in the best way you can, then it's time for give back from our government. And I'm disappointed that that's not happening.
Well, it seems Wendy's still on the fence when it comes to voting. As for the rest of the country, Canadians head to the polls on October 21st. Here in Toronto, I'm Darren Maharaj for theZoomer.
So how do each party's offerings compare? And will Zoomers like Wendy ultimately decide based on self-interest alone? Marissa.
Not necessarily. I think in Wendy's case, she's 76, she's still working. That's a trend we're seeing lately because people can't afford to retire. So in her case, it sounds like things like dental care and pharmacare would be important to her. After all, that is part of the reason she's still working, is so that she doesn't have to give up her benefits. Sounds like she's undecided. And I think whether she's voting based on self-interest or not, perhaps she may, but we know that others won't, which is why things like climate change are still important, because people care about what they're going to be leaving to their children and their grandchildren.
Charles, you brought up your parents, and, you know, I don't know if they're liberals like you, but would they vote based on the goodies they get or other things?
I think, like most people, they vote for a variety of reasons, and they think very carefully about how they're going to cast their ballot. But I will say that Wendy's story is all too typical of so many seniors across this country. And I think the increase in the survivor's benefit of 25% to both CPP and Quebec pension plan as well as of age 75, that's going to be an extra $2,080 per individual.
You're talking about the survivor benefit?
That's right, and that's going to impact 1.2 million Canadian seniors, and that's very significant. And also, Wendy, as a working senior, I point to something we did in the budget last April, which is to say that we increased the threshold for the triggering of the guaranteed income supplement to be clawed back upon receipt of old age security payments. And as a result, that threshold has now gone from 30,000 total to 50,000 total, and that is very significant for working seniors.
John, the Conservatives are saying we'll put more money in your pocket, but for seniors, basically it's a tax break, and it's not a refundable tax break. Is that enough?
Well, I don't think it's ever enough, and I think it's one of those things where governments have to be responsible in ensuring that they've got not only responsibilities to Canadians of all ages, but seniors included, but also for their futures and for their kids' down the road. And I think the debts and deficits are an important factor in ensuring that their kids and people's kids can survive and have the ability to be able to withstand and work and make livings and so forth. And I think what we've seen with the Liberal government in the last 4 years is, instead of focusing on these areas, they've been focusing on spending money in foreign affairs and international areas and sending money all over the place, instead of focusing on more domestic related issues and spending and having more tax breaks or more tax credits and giving more money back to Canadians and even seniors.
The NDP seems to have struck a chord with the dental care, pharmacare.
Absolutely. I've been in politics now for almost 30 years, and as long as I've been in politics, the Liberals have been promising a pharmacare plan. And while they've been in power a number of times as a majority government, they've never really seen the value to them electorally to get it done. I think that's wrong, and so do Canadians. This is why we see this mistrust of elected officials, that you'll promise us whatever we need to be promised to get our vote. What we've now seen, and some of the polling data has been showing, is people are tired of it, and they actually want governments to get on with what they're promising and come up with a valid reason why you can't get it done this time.
Very quickly, just Mike Schreiner, Elizabeth May's package has been roundly panned because she's promising the moon and the stars and saying, and by the way, I'm going to balance the budget in 5 years, which no one else seems to be able to do.
Stories like Wendy's are sadly far too common, and that's exactly why we need the Green Party's plan to invest more in social and affordable housing, looking at working with provinces and municipalities around co-housing and cooperative housing so seniors have an affordable place to live, that they're not isolated, but also investing in programs like universal pharmacare, dental programs targeted to those with low incomes, having pension protections in place when companies go bankrupt, but also enhancing the value of the CPP for seniors. Those make a real difference in people's lives. And I think Elizabeth May, as the one senior who is a political leader in the country, just shows that she has a vision to address the needs and concerns of seniors.
Okay. When we come back, the environment takes center stage.
This Liberal government has taken one of the most progressive stands in the Western world by putting a price on pollution in an active attempt to counter climate change.
Spencer L. writes, "How ridiculous all the parties are, trying to bribe us with our own money. A pox on all their houses."
Welcome back. Poll after poll is finding that climate change has been a growing concern among Canadians. In fact, a number of recent surveys have shown that the environment only comes second to the economy, a spot that healthcare also has. So why are Canadians paying more attention to what the parties are offering for the planet? Brian Lilly, do you believe it?
I've been following politics long enough to know that people will say healthcare and the environment are at the top of their list when things are going pretty well. And then when it comes to voting, they sometimes look elsewhere. And so I wonder if that's a bit of what's going on. What I find interesting is that a recent Ipsos poll asked, how much more are you willing to spend? And this is one of several polls. One poll a couple of months ago said, would you spend as much as you spend on Netflix for the environment? No. Will you spend $1 more? No. And the reason is that people don't believe the politicians when they say, give us your money and we'll fix the problem. It's not that they don't think it's a problem. It's not that they don't want it fixed. It's that they doubt the guys that we elect will actually do it. And that's why I don't think there's a real loss for Andrew Scheer, or, to a lesser extent because of where he is in the popular support, Maxime Bernier, and saying, I'll get rid of the carbon tax because, except for people that are wedded to the idea, most voters look at a carbon tax and go, pick my pocket, but will you do anything with it?
But here's the problem, and I somewhat agree with what you're saying there, is that it's easy to say it's a concern of mine because the opposite is to tell a researcher it's of no concern of mine. And nobody wants to say, I don't care about the environment, I don't care about climate change, pollute away, leave my kids and grandkids a terrible legacy. So everybody's going to sign up for that. But it's not until you get to the hard choices of policy, what are you going to do about it? And especially, what's the difference between what the parties are proposing to do about it? Nobody in this election has really, possibly except Bernier, come down to saying, do we need these pipelines? Do we not need these pipelines? Should we have a carbon tax? How many jobs do we kill if we wipe out all of the oil extraction industry in Alberta? That's not been a topic. And the thing I want everybody to remember, I think among the political parties here, 15 million Zoomers, 45 plus, 6 million seniors, 65 plus. Surprise, surprise, they don't all think the same.
One of the things that Justin Trudeau has come under fire for, he presents himself as a steward of the environment, but then people say, aha, but he's in favor of pipeline. Bought that pipeline?
Yeah, Western Canada matters to the government of Canada, to the people of Canada. Our energy resources are integral to our economic success. I mean, Stephen Harper didn't build an inch of pipelines for the 9 years that he was in power. Justin Trudeau bought a pipeline. There's no distinction as to whether the government is in favor of pipelines or not. We are, right? We understand that energy is critical to our success. At the same time, this Liberal government has taken one of the most progressive stands in the Western world by putting a price on pollution in an active attempt to counter climate change, which most reasonable thinking people recognize as a cataclysmic danger to the planet, to our children, to our grandchildren. These issues are real. The scientific debate is over. The world has to do something now, and Justin Trudeau has moved farther than any other political leader in the world in this regard.
Okay, so what about Justin Trudeau and his 2 planes?
Well, but this is it, the hypocrisy.
Yeah, exactly.
The hypocrisy coming from Justin Trudeau is incredible, and I think that's why I believe that Canadians are starting to tune in now, and those who voted for Justin 4 years ago are looking and saying, is this the right person? Is this the same person I believed in 4 years ago? Because it's things like the 2 planes. It's also, and I give my friend Charles a lot of credit with respect to the whole messaging about buying the pipeline. Let's be clear, Justin Trudeau had to buy that pipeline because it was falling apart. The disaster strategy that the Liberals were in place with that pipeline, and the fact that the company that owned it was going to go away, and that they had no other choice but to buy it to salvage the West. So it wasn't as if it was this big thing that they bought the pipeline. They've had to buy it because it was just going the wrong way, in the wrong direction from the perspective of being able to actually implement something that is so well needed across Canada, let alone in Alberta.
Canadians are problem solvers, not problem deniers, and the Conservatives seem to be denying that climate change is a real issue. The Liberals are all over the map, declare climate emergency one day, buy a pipeline the next day, say you're going to end fossil fuel subsidies. The IMF just came out and said we're subsidizing fossil fuels $50 billion a year in Canada. Even with all those subsidies, more people today in Canada work in the clean energy sector than work in the oil and gas sector. Imagine if some of those subsidies were going to support the jobs of the 21st century. So the climate issue, please, thank you. The climate issue is more than an environmental issue, it's an economic issue as well.
Okay, when we come back, we take a closer look at the party leaders. That's next.
Justin Trudeau has been quite the faux feminist. Every woman in his cabinet that had the temerity to speak up against him, he turfed or pushed completely out of the way underneath the bus.
Beth S. writes, an election promise is a little bit like vows that are repeated at a wedding. Some, of course, have every intention of keeping those vows/promises. Others are only saying what the people want to hear. I believe both are saying the words in good faith. However, due to any number of circumstances and issues, they are forgotten or deliberately set aside. I myself am very interested in doing something about the housing crisis we as BC citizens face.
Welcome back. There's no question the party leaders in this election have had their share of missteps and controversy. With so many headlines and gaffes unfolding, who is winning over the hearts of voters, or at least who do they consider the least bad option? Okay, so we've got Trudeau with black and brown face. We've got Andrew Scheer fudging his resume and stuff like that. So let's start with Charles.
Oh, sure. Start with a more serious issue.
I remember the day Justin Trudeau was born. He has such a unique personal connection to Canadians. I think it's one of the reasons that his brand has proven to be so enormously strong. In any
black and brown face.
In any other political context, I would tell you that kind of thing would not play well, would be one way of putting it. Might actually have a decidedly torrential impact on an election campaign. Most importantly, his apology was without reservation. It was unqualified.
And this is the Liberal cheery section here.
And more than anything, I think people think he's sincere.
Except
He's worked so hard to be Prime Minister of this country over the last 4 years. He came in by surprise.
Speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim, please.
With all due respect to his apology being sincere, he made an apology and said, oh no, I only did it twice. And oops, I forgot about that third time I did blackface. And when asked in a town hall, to the nearest 5, how many times did you do blackface? He refused to answer that. So let's not be too cute about his unreserved apology. Justin Trudeau has been quite the faux feminist. Every woman in his cabinet that had the temerity to speak up against him, he turfed or pushed completely out of the way underneath the bus. He has talked about Indigenous communities and how he is this great defender of Indigenous communities. And when he's had the opportunity to make it right, put his money where his mouth is, he then says, "Nah, we're gonna think about that compensation." This man has apologized for absolutely everything except for what it boils down to is anything he's done, he's sorry, not sorry.
If you think Indigenous issues are going to be solved in 4 years or even 40 years, you are markedly mistaken. And I would also remind you that half of the cabinet, for the first time in Canadian history, is made up of women, and that is after the dismissal of Miss Wilson-Raybould and Miss Philpott.
And the two that he actually did any work on, that did policy work, that actually tried to keep the Prime Minister out of jail, he threw under the bus as fast as he could. The only two things that they really got to run on, really from a policy perspective, is sort of the cannabis issue, which they have bungled up, frankly.
You don't see the child benefit as having made the grade?
And I think the fact that we don't have universal daycare for 30 years is a problem. The fact is he's a faux feminist, a faux leader, a faux environmentalist. He sat in front of Greta Thunberg and said, "I've got your back," and then jumped on his one of two planes, which he needed because he needed to carry the costumes. So let's not talk about who he is.
Do I get to respond to that?
Okay, wait. On the other side, and I'm directing this at John. So Andrew Scheer's troubles is little things. They're little things, but to me, it makes me wonder, does he in his heart of hearts think that he's really not up to being Prime Minister? He fudged his resume. He said he was an insurance broker. Well, he wasn't an insurance broker. He didn't come clean about his second citizenship. And in terms of his personal views on abortion, he had to be badgered by I don't know how many people before he actually came out and said, and I believe that he's not going to bring it up before he actually came out and said, "I'm pro-life." So
I think it shows, obviously, that he's a politician who is obviously, running for leader and is trying to do the best that he can. And he's been a politician for a long, long time. I think when Justin Trudeau was doing brown-face, blackface, at least he was a Speaker of the House. He was a Speaker of the House and doing something productive for the country. But I think with Andrew Scheer, what you see is somebody who is honest and is trying to do what he thinks is best for the country and leaders of the party. And I think from that perspective, he gets a lot of credit from that. And I also think to Charles and the Liberals, I think the issue that faces Justin is I don't believe he's a racist, and I've said this publicly a number of times, but I do think that it shows a huge amount of lack of judgment for somebody who at 29 and the son of a prime minister should have known better, and from that perspective. So I do think that it's one of those where when you put yourself out there publicly as he has, as being this person, a feminist and above all reproach, that's where Andrew Scheer's never done that. Andrew Scheer's been a humble guy who's just, from middle-class surroundings, and he's trying to do the best that he can. Whereas Justin, I think, has put himself in as this higher level, and I think it's been showed now that it's not the case anymore. And that's the challenge.
David, speak to their character as a nonpartisan.
One thing as a nonpartisan, again, but studying Zoomers, that I think all parties should remember. This age group has seen it all a million times. We've listened to, we are experts. Our BS meter, if you'll excuse me, is sky high. We've listened, in our youth, we were Trudeau maniacs. His father was he has nothing compared to his father as a rock star. When his father hit the scene, we fell head over heels over Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and 4 years later, he was telling the farmers in Manitoba, "Why should I sell your wheat?" Then he became He lost, he won, he lost, he won. We've seen it all. So what we're looking for is authenticity, and it's not in great supply here, okay? And I think the biggest weakness, if I may say so, and I agree about the race, is not for me to say, but his biggest Achilles heel on the blackface, brownface, I think, for this age group, is not, is he a racist or was he sincere? It's that he wants slack that he won't give anybody else. He wants us to cut him some slack. Anybody else did this, they'd be gone in a heartbeat, but he needs to skate. And I think that's the weak point. And I think that's the point of the authenticity that rubs people the wrong way. So I think that there's a search for authenticity, And I don't think, I think that advantage, and if I may say so, in strictly political terms, would be to Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May over Trudeau and Scheer.
I was just going to say that before we wrap
sorry,
in. I think they win. No,
I think they win.
They win on authenticity, but I don't think it's going to help them with the voting at the polls.
No, maybe not, but
we'll
I think
see.
they are.
I think it's
We'll
actually
see.
what we're seeing in the demographics and the shifts is actually, it is mattering to people. When they've actually sat down in the last few weeks of the campaign and they've looked at, on whole, how these different leaders have performed, do their spidey senses tingle that they're not quite who they say they are, or do they actually believe that that particular leader is in it for them? And that's where I see the trajectory that Jagmeet Singh has been under.
Okay. When we come back, we take questions from the audience. That's next.
Most of the gun violence are created by gangs. And it's because we've got a system in place where once they get charged with a gun violence, they go to courts, then they get back out on bail within a week or 2 weeks, and then they commit the crime again.
Welcome back. It's time now for questions from the audience, starting with Robert. Hey, Robert.
My question for the parties is, given our recent experiences with the environment and so forth, what is your position regarding our judicial system and our courts of law?
You know, if I could, and it's a great question, I think, and a lot of folks don't zero in on the judicial and the justice system. I think we've got, you know, I think by and large, most people are happy with the Supreme Court and the way things are going. I do feel, though, that when it comes to gun violence and some of those issues, that's where a lot of the attention gets focused on from a public perspective, and also during election campaigns, as we're seeing, because all parties are trying to come up with some rules and laws to try to ban guns. And what you saw from the Conservatives is ensuring that there are tougher laws with respect to those who get caught with guns, especially gangs. And in Canada, unlike the US, but in Canada, by and large, most of the gun violence are created by gangs. And it's because we've got a system in place where once they get charged with a gun violence, they go to courts, then they get back out on bail within a week or 2 weeks, and then they commit the crime again. Statistics show. So what Andrew Scheer has been able to say is, look, we want to get rid of that bail system and try to get, so if you are a gang member and you cause crime with a gun, it's going to get stiffer penalties, so you stay in there longer and create that issue so they don't come back out and do it again.
One of the things that deeply concerns me about our judicial system is the disproportionate number of Indigenous and racialized people in our court system and the issues around solitary confinement, et cetera. So one of the things I'm proud of, and I know it's controversial, but the Green Party's position about decriminalizing drugs, which I know is a controversial issue, but if you've looked at other countries like Portugal, they have shown that a decrease in drug use and at the same time a decrease in pressure on our criminal justice system. So I think there's some opportunities to rethink our approaches to criminal justice to create a fairer society and take pressure off the criminal justice system.
Thank you. When we come back, final thoughts from our panelists. That's next.
On Zoomer Radio's Fight Back with Libby Znaimer, Bob from Etobicoke and Janet from Barrie called in to give their opinions on the federal party leaders.
My main concern is that if Trudeau was to win, and the Liberals were to win, virtually they're winning in Quebec and Ontario. The rest of the West won't have anything to do with them. So I still believe that there will possibly be a separation of the country.
As far as Andrew Scheer goes, well, for starters, Harper was the worst prime minister we've ever had. We see what the Conservatives are doing in Ontario. The cuts they make are hurting all the vulnerable people. Our healthcare system's in a mess.
On Twitter, Sharon writes, I thought elections were supposed to be a political campaign and not a smear campaign. If you, as politicians, can't discredit someone on the political views, then you are no better than the person you are discrediting. Hashtag Canada Election 2019. Keep the comments coming in and connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and via email at rsvp@zoomermedia.ca. Don't forget, for free tickets to the show, go to www.universe.com and search Zoomer Media and log on to www.thezoomertv.com for full episodes and more.
Welcome back to the Zoomer. It's now time for final thoughts from our panelists, starting to my left. David.
We heard about healthcare, we heard about housing, not really in any detail. The test here is going to be, I think, what are you going to do after the election? Do you really understand this group, or are you just going to show up 4 years from now, check the box with a few little handouts? That's going to be what the Zoomers are watching for.
So far, what we've seen from each of the parties in terms of their platforms has been very piecemeal when it comes to seniors, nothing that takes a wholesome, comprehensive look at this demographic that's 6 million large and growing. So from CARP's perspective, we continue to uphold the rights and advocate for seniors in order to improve their lives. If you're passionate about improving the lives of seniors, visit our website and join the fight.
Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are going to increase old age security for folks at age 75. That's going to lift 20,000 seniors out of poverty. We're going to increase the survivor's benefit for CPP and QPP by 25%. That's another 1.2 million Canadians. And before I forget, we're also going to lower your cell phone bills by 25%.
This election is going to be about who you trust in the next, to take this government and this country the next 4 years, and who do you believe over the course of the last little while that can do that and take those changes and make the economy stronger and bring in health care and also think about the economy.
Right now, it's a minority government between the Liberals or the Conservatives. The Liberals, if they want to win, have to convince people to actually get off the couch, and polling shows that their voters are not motivated. The Conservatives have to convince enough people that Andrew Scheer can be trusted, and that's where it is, and everyone else is fighting for seats beyond that.
And if it is a minority government, a strong Green caucus will hold one of these two to be honest for once for Canadians.
It's important that people go beyond lip service. The authenticity of your leaders matter. The authenticity of your caucus matters. What are they bringing to the table as well? Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats have a very comprehensive plan, and they are in it for you.
Thank you for being with us. I hope this program has helped you make your decision. And whatever that may be, please be sure to get out and vote. I'm Libby Znaimer. It's time to zoom out.